So moving right along, we have our next speaker, someone that I've had the pleasure of getting to know a little bit better over the last few months. She is the CMO and EVP at McAfee Security, Penny Baldwin. She is responsible for leading all marketing efforts for McAfee worldwide. Previously, she was acting CMO and senior consumer marketer at a company called Yahoo, many of you are familiar with. And over the course of her career, she's had a heavy emphasis on digital marketing and global campaigns driving material business impact that we've just heard a lot about from Mark. Prior to working brand side, Penny was a managing partner at agency powerhouse Y&R. And today she is going to be talking about social intelligence and informing influencer strategy. So Penny.
Thank you. Thanks, Aaron. Okay, am I mic'd? Can you guys hear me okay? So I wanted to start the conversation today by disabusing you of the notion that this CMO was confused about branding. For those of you who attended the Intel keynote last night, the CEO of Intel announced that we intend to migrate the McAfee brand over to Intel Security, coupled with the Red Shield. And if I may, I'm going to ask you to indulge me just a couple of minutes explaining why we're doing that, and then we'll move on to the subject at hand. But it is our belief that going forward in the future, right, with this pervasive computing that's happening across both your business and your personal life, whether it's your toaster, your car, your laptop, or your server, that as computing becomes more pervasive, so must security, right? Security's got to be always on, ever present, everywhere. It's got to be ubiquitous. So when you articulate a vision and a goal of that magnitude, and it's a big one, it only makes sense that we capitalize on the equities of the Intel brand for innovation, performance, trust, and couple that with the core equities of the McAfee brand, safety and protection. So our intent last night was to signal the coming together of these two powerful brands to pave the way for that vision for the future. So that's why I was announced as McAfee initially, but today I'm Intel Security. So a little bit of background. Now let's move on to actually the subject matter at hand. How we're thinking about using social intelligence to influence our strategies. Before I start, I have a question for you guys. How many of you in the room today have unlimited resources? You can spend as much as you want. You can't answer this question, Mark. You can spend as much as you want, and you have access to unlimited headcount. Anybody? No. Okay, well then I can safely deduce that you're likely suffering from the same challenge that I face every day of my life, which is how do we figure out how to get all of our things done, meet all of our objectives, drive all of our programs, have material business impact with a decreasing resource base, decreased headcount, decreased budgets, right? So the answer for me at the time was twofold. We are going to pivot our marketing mix to be far more digitally driven. There are two main strategies that we're pursuing. The first is drive an expanded brand presence, expanded position, higher leadership, higher visibility, higher credibility through thought leadership, and couple that with really aggressive digital marketing, and digital marketing that scales. So how do you scale digital marketing? Because digital marketing isn't exactly inexpensive either. Well, the key way that we're thinking about scaling digital marketing is through influencer marketing. And what we're really trying to do is move away from kind of a broad outreach to the world at large to really honing in on the people in the security industry who wield enormous power and influence and market to them to evangelize on our behalf. Right? So at the end of the day, not only is it far more cost effective, it's far more credible. It's a little bit like dating. You know, when you go out with a guy, and I'm married, so this is not a current day analogy, but back when I was in my 20s, when you went out on a date and a guy said, hey, I'm great, the first thing you did was say, oh my God, not so much. But if a close friend who you respect says, that guy is great, you really should go out with him, boy, what material impact that has. So in our quest to get to influencer marketing, more aggressive digital marketing, where did we start? We started by eating our own dog food. And what I mean by that is if I'm going to advocate that digital and social marketing is key, then the first thing we've got to do is make sure we're behaving in alignment with what we're preaching. So even the CMO is digital, tweeting, blogging, aggressive outreach. But that's not where it ended. From there, we collected the data. I like to say within McAfee that we strive to be customer-led and data-driven. He who knows the most about the customer and he knows most about how they buy, what influences their attitudes, where they go, what they do, wins. So these are just a few data points that we've unearthed about the power of digital marketing. And some of these stats are actually pretty amazing. By the end of 2012, Comscore was capturing 1.4 trillion digital interactions per month. That's just crazy numbers, and that's 2012 data. So the point is that it started with really auditing the data landscape and saying, is there a business case here? And of course, there is. But this stat is probably the most important one. You know the old 80-20 rule? 20% of your customers account for 80% of your profits. It's actually far more pronounced in the digital world order. According to some Forrester data, 6% of the influencers produce over 80% of all impressions. And then when you overlay on top of that their downstream syndication and the resonance and credibility of their voice, focusing our dollars on that 6% is money very well spent. And I bet even the ISS model would say that, Mark. So what did we do as a starting point to go down this path? Well, the first thing we did is we collected our agency partners, our comms partner and PR communications partner, as well as WCG as our social media partner, and we brought them both together. And we said, we want you guys to collaborate. We want you to come together on auditing the media landscape. That was my term for it. And what I meant was, I want to look at all broadcast media, all print media, all online media, every blogger, everybody who tweets, everybody who produces video. I want the whole landscape looked at. And I want you guys to come back to me and figure out a way to stack rank the influencers. I want to find out who the top 25 people are in the security industry who wield the greatest amount of impact. Who are they? And of course, some of them are people we already knew and were already communicating with, but there were others who weren't, that we didn't know about. More importantly, though, what this did, this rigor and this analysis gave us a base of credibility when advocating this strategy with senior management within the company. So you can see on the bottom right there, after all of the analysis that was conducted between the comms agency and WCG, we were able to identify those top 25 influencers. The next thing we did was then plot them. And we plotted them based on reach, relevance, and resonance, right? So how many people do they influence? How relevant they are in the security category? And how much downstream syndication do they produce? So when you scatter plot the influencers, it gives you even more insight into kind of where you need to focus and how they can best be leveraged. The next step from here, after identifying the top 25, is to say, not only do we have to think about how we influence those top 25, let's look at what influences them. Who do they go to? Who influences those top 25 people? And what data sources do they turn to produce their content and their point of view? Ironically, what you'll find, what WCG found, is that the same 4 to 6 sources of data is used universally by everybody. It's a little bit like that 80-20 rule. So from there, after plotting the landscape of influential voices and better understanding who influences them and where they get their data sources, we're now able to embed that thinking into all of our outbound marketing programs. We're running one right now for Next Generation Firewall. And with WCG's help, it includes pushing out the content capsules that, Bob, you mentioned earlier, right? Which is the full story that we're trying to tell in all of those places where it makes sense and against the people that we most want to influence. In addition, on the public relations side, we also use the data to think, I think, in new and novel ways about how we create our communications outreach. Instead of kind of doing the tried and true, we're just going to push out a press release to industry trade press, we now craft our strategies in such a way where we say, you know what? If we really want to get to influencer X, Y, and Z, it's probably best to nest the story initially in this online site, because we know that that influences the influencers, and that we'll get greater pickup, more coverage, and it'll be carried forward by the people who hold more credibility. So there's a whole kind of ecosystem that now exists that forces us to think in very new and very different ways. And at the end of the day, what business outcomes are we trying to drive? Well, of course, perception and behavioral change, commercial success, revenue and margin impact, deeper communities, but last and probably most importantly, I would say, is deeper trust. Think about it. We're in the security business. What's the single most important brand attribute that you need to own as a security company? Trust. I maintain that if we can drive much higher levels of trust, which we will do now as Intel Security, that will lead to commanding market share. And that's my goal. Thank you.